The wrestling world just exploded with one of the most shocking revelations in recent memory as the identity of CM Punk's mystery attacker has finally been unveiled and nobody saw this coming. For months fans have been speculating, debating and creating countless theories about who could possibly want to take out one of the most polarizing figures in professional wrestling, but the truth is far more twisted than anyone could have imagined. If you're a wrestling fan who's been following this saga, you need to hear every single detail of what went down, because this story has more layers than an onion and each one is more shocking than the last. Before we dive into the explosive details, make sure you hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss any of the incredible wrestling content we have coming your way. The saga began several months ago when CM Punk was making his highly anticipated return to wrestling after years away from the squared circle. His comeback was supposed to be a celebration, a moment for fans to rejoice that one of the most talented and outspoken performers was back where he belonged. But instead of a smooth return, Punk found himself in the middle of a nightmare that would consume his every waking moment. The attack started small at first, almost imperceptible to those who weren't paying close attention. Equipment would go missing right before his matches. His entrance music would cut out at crucial moments. His gear would be tampered with in ways that could have led to serious injury. These weren't accidents or coincidences, as Punk quickly realized. Someone was deliberately trying to sabotage him, and they were getting bolder with each passing week. The first major physical attack happened backstage at a major event when Punk was blindsided by a masked figure who came out of nowhere. The attacker struck with precision and purpose, delivering a brutal assault that left Punk battered and questioning everyone around him. Security footage was mysteriously corrupted and there were no witnesses willing to come forward. The locker room fell silent as paranoia set in. Punk couldn't trust anyone. Every handshake felt like a potential threat. Every friendly conversation could be hiding sinister intentions. The psychological warfare was just as damaging as the physical attacks, and whoever was behind this knew exactly what they were doing. As weeks turned into months, the attacks continued to escalate in both frequency and severity. Punk would be jumped in parking garages, ambushed during interviews, and even attacked in his hotel room. Each time the assailant wore a different disguise, making it impossible to identify them through conventional means. The wrestling community was in an uproar, with everyone from fellow wrestlers to fans to journalists trying to crack the case. Social media exploded with theories. Some thought it was an old rival seeking revenge. Others believed it was someone from Punk's past trying to settle an ancient score. A few even suggested it might be someone within the company itself, someone who felt threatened by Punk's return and star power. The management of the wrestling promotion was caught in an impossible position. They needed to protect one of their biggest stars, but they also couldn't turn the locker room into a police state. Investigations were launched, but each one hit a dead end. Suspects were questioned, but everyone had alibis. The frustration mounted as it became clear that the attacker was always one step ahead, operating with inside knowledge that suggested they were closer to Punk than anyone wanted to admit. The tension backstage reached a breaking point as wrestlers began to turn on each other, accusations flying in every direction and trust evaporating like water in the desert. Punk himself became increasingly isolated as the attacks wore him down physically and mentally. The man who once stood fearlessly against corporate machines and spoke truth to power found himself looking over his shoulder constantly. His performances in the ring began to suffer, not from lack of skill but from the mental burden of never knowing when the next attack would come. Friends tried to rally around him, but Punk pushed many of them away, unable to shake the feeling that the attacker could be anyone, even someone he considered a close ally. The paranoia consumed him, turning him into a shadow of the confident performer fans had known and loved. The breakthrough in the case came from the most unexpected source. A young production assistant who had been quietly observing the chaos noticed a pattern that everyone else had missed. The attacks always happened when a specific group of people were present in the building. This assistant spent weeks cross-referencing schedules, security logs, and personnel records before finally identifying a common denominator. Armed with this information, they approached Punk directly, bypassing management to ensure the information wouldn't be leaked. What they told Punk sent shockwaves through his entire being, because the evidence pointed to someone he had trusted implicitly, someone who had been by his side throughout this entire ordeal, offering support and solidarity. The revelation hit Punk like a freight train as he realized the truth had been hiding in plain sight all along. The mystery attacker was none other than his own protege, a young wrestler he had personally mentored and helped break into the business. This was someone Punk had taken under his wing, sharing knowledge, wisdom, and opportunities. He had vouched for this person, opened doors, and stood up for them when others doubted their abilities. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound could, because it represented a complete violation of trust and loyalty. But the story didn't end with just identifying the attacker, because the motivations behind the attacks were equally shocking and revealed a darkness that nobody had anticipated. The protege, whose name had been carefully kept out of the spotlight throughout their rise, had been harboring resentment toward Punk for years. Despite all the opportunities and guidance Punk had provided, this individual felt they were living in Punk's shadow, unable to establish their own identity. Every accomplishment was attributed to Punk's mentorship. Every victory was seen as a reflection of Punk's teaching rather than their own talent. The pressure of constantly being compared to their mentor ate away at them, creating a toxic mixture of gratitude and hatred. They wanted to prove themselves by destroying the very person who had built them up. In their twisted logic, if they could take down CM Punk, they would finally emerge from his shadow and establish themselves as a force to be reckoned with on their own merits. But the motivations went even deeper than professional jealousy. The protege had also been manipulated by outside forces who saw an opportunity to use their relationship with Punk for their own ends. A rival promotion had approached them months before the attacks began, offering money and promises of stardom if they could successfully drive Punk out of the business. They played on the protege's insecurities, feeding their resentment and convincing them that Punk was actually holding them back rather than helping them advance. The manipulation was sophisticated and calculated, turning genuine grievances into weapons that could be used to justify increasingly violent actions. The protege became a puppet dancing on strings pulled by people who had no loyalty to anyone except their own interests. When Punk finally confronted his attacker face to face, the encounter was emotionally devastating for everyone involved. The protege tried to justify their actions, claiming they had no choice and that Punk would never understand the burden of being in his shadow. They accused Punk of being selfish, of using them to boost his own legacy rather than genuinely caring about their career. The words were designed to wound, and they succeeded in cutting Punk to his core. But Punk, being who he is, didn't back down. He challenged every accusation, forcing his former protege to face the reality of what they had done. He pointed out the opportunities he had created, the doors he had opened, and the countless times he had put their interests ahead of his own. The confrontation laid bare the tragic waste of potential and the corruption of a promising career by jealousy and outside manipulation. The wrestling promotion faced a difficult decision about how to handle the situation. The protege had clearly crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. They had endangered not just Punk but other performers and staff with their reckless attacks. Legal authorities were considering criminal charges for assault and conspiracy. But there was also the reality that the protege was still young, with their whole career potentially ahead of them. The company had invested time and resources into their development. Fans who had been following their rise were shocked and divided over what should happen next. Some demanded immediate termination and criminal prosecution. Others argued for rehabilitation and a second chance, noting that the protege had been manipulated by outside forces and had acted out of pain and insecurity rather than pure malice. The rival promotion that had orchestrated the manipulation quickly distanced themselves from the situation, claiming they had no knowledge of any violent actions and that any conversations with the protege were purely hypothetical discussions about future opportunities. Their lawyers worked overtime to ensure no evidence could directly tie them to the attacks. But the wrestling community knew the truth. The court of public opinion had already rendered its verdict, even if legal courts might never be able to prove the full extent of the conspiracy. The incident sparked a broader conversation about how promotions recruit talent and the ethical boundaries that should exist in competition between companies. It also raised questions about duty of care and what responsibilities established stars have toward younger talent they choose to mentor. For CM Punk, the revelation brought a complex mixture of emotions. There was relief in finally knowing the truth and being able to stop looking over his shoulder constantly. There was anger at the betrayal and at the outside forces that had corrupted someone with genuine potential. There was sadness at the waste of what could have been a positive mentorship relationship that benefited both parties. And there was guilt over whether he had somehow failed as a mentor, if he had been too focused on his own career to notice the warning signs, or if he had inadvertently contributed to the pressure his protege felt. These feelings played out publicly as Punk addressed the situation in interviews and on social media, giving fans insight into the emotional toll the entire ordeal had taken on him. The protege eventually issued a public apology, though its sincerity was debated endlessly by fans and observers. They claimed to take full responsibility for their actions while also pointing to the manipulation they had experienced and the mental health struggles they had been dealing with privately. They spoke about the pressure of living up to expectations and the fear that they would never be seen as anything more than CM Punk's creation. The apology was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as genuine remorse and the first step toward redemption. Others viewed it as damage control designed to salvage what was left of a career that had been destroyed by their own choices. The wrestling world remained divided on whether the protege deserved forgiveness or should be permanently exiled from the industry. The aftermath of the revelation saw significant changes within the promotion. Security protocols were overhauled to prevent similar situations in the future. Mentorship programs were formalized with oversight to ensure healthy relationships between veterans and younger talent. Mental health resources were expanded, recognizing that the pressure of the wrestling business can break people who don't have adequate support systems. The company also implemented stricter policies regarding contact between their roster and rival promotions to prevent future attempts at manipulation and sabotage. These changes were long overdue, and while they came at a high cost, they represented positive steps toward creating a safer and more supportive environment for everyone in the industry. CM Punk's response to the entire situation ultimately defined how fans would remember this chapter of his career. Rather than seeking revenge or allowing bitterness to consume him, Punk chose to focus on healing and moving forward. He acknowledged the pain of the betrayal but refused to let it destroy his faith in mentorship or his willingness to help younger talent in the future. He spoke publicly about the importance of forgiveness, not for the sake of the person who wronged you but for your own peace of mind. This mature and measured response earned him respect even from critics who had previously questioned his temperament. It showed growth and wisdom that comes from surviving difficult experiences and choosing to be better rather than bitter. The protégé's career remains in limbo as they serve a suspension and work with counselors to address the issues that led to their actions. Whether they will ever return to wrestling is uncertain. The path to redemption in the court of public opinion is long and difficult, especially when trust has been so thoroughly violated. Some promoters have quietly expressed interest in giving them a second chance once enough time has passed, arguing that people deserve opportunities to learn from mistakes and grow. Others have made it clear that the protégé's actions were so egregious that they should never be allowed near a wrestling ring again. The debate continues with passionate arguments on both sides and no clear consensus emerging. The revelation of CM Punk's mystery attacker serves as a cautionary tale about the dark side of professional wrestling. It exposes the vulnerabilities that exist when young talent is thrust into high-pressure situations without adequate support. It demonstrates how easily insecurity and jealousy can be weaponized by those with ulterior motives. It shows the devastating consequences of betrayed trust and the ripple effects that extend far beyond the immediate parties involved. But it also highlights the resilience of the human spirit and the possibility of growth and healing even after profound trauma. The wrestling industry has been forced to look in the mirror and confront uncomfortable truths about how it operates, and that kind of self-examination can lead to meaningful positive change. As this chapter closes and new stories begin to unfold, the wrestling world carries forward the lessons learned from this shocking saga. The trust between mentor and student has been complicated but not destroyed entirely. The industry has been reminded that talent development requires more than just teaching moves and promos. It requires emotional support and genuine care for the whole person. CM Punk continues his career with new awareness of the complexities of human relationships and the reality that even good intentions can sometimes lead to unexpected and painful outcomes. The mystery has been solved, but the impact of the revelation will be felt for years to come, shaping how wrestlers relate to each other and how the business protects its performers from threats both external and internal. If you've made it this far, you're clearly as invested in this story as we are, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible wrestling content that dives deep into the stories that matter most to fans around the world.